The ship was seized while Trump was still holding his wine glass. That single fact, confirmed, documented, timestamped, tells you everything you need to know about what the most expensive diplomatic summit of Trump's second term actually produced. And if you stay with me for the next few minutes, you will understand exactly why the most powerful nation on earth just flew home from Beijing with a dinner photo and a statement that changed nothing. Not one operational thing. Nothing. Last night, Donald Trump sat at a state banquet inside the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. The room was full. 30 of America's most powerful CEOs, Boeing, NVIDIA, Apple, flew in specifically for this moment. Elon Musk was there. Tim Cook was there. Jensen Huang of NVIDIA was there. Xi Jinping hosted. The food was served. The toasts were made. Trump called Xi a great leader who always tells the truth. And at that exact moment, while the cameras were rolling and the champagne was poured, Iran moved on a vessel in the Strait of Hormuz and seized it. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We document every development on this war daily, and what comes next in this story matters more than anything the summit announced. Here is where this gets deeply uncomfortable. Every regional diplomatic source for the past 3 weeks described this summit, the Beijing summit, as the last realistic inflection point, the last moment before this war either wound down or exploded to a level nobody could control. Iran's foreign minister flew to Beijing a week early. He briefed Wang Yi, China's top diplomat, on Iran's full negotiating position. Trump flew in on Air Force One saying he would have a long conversation with Xi about Iran. The entire diplomatic architecture of the past 21 days was constructed around one assumption, that China would use its enormous leverage over Tehran to push Iran toward a nuclear deal and a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. That was the ask. That was the summit's entire strategic purpose on the Iran file. So what did the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio say when reporters asked what came out of the summit on Iran? He said, and I need you to hear this carefully, the United States was not asking China for help with Iran. Not asking. Read that again. After Washington spent weeks warning Beijing that its support for Iran was detrimental to the bilateral relationship, after the U.S. sanctioned 12 Chinese entities the Monday before the summit for facilitating Iranian oil purchases, after American intelligence reported China was preparing to deliver air defense systems to Tehran, after China absorbed 80% of Iran's oil exports in 2025, after Beijing invoked its own anti-sanction law to openly defy American Iran policy. After all of that, Rubio stood before reporters and said the United States was not asking for help. This is the moment where you need to ask yourself, what exactly was this summit for? Drop your answer in the comments right now. We read every single one, and the sharpest responses get featured. Because here is what the joint statement actually contains on Iran. 2 items. First, both sides agreed Iran should never obtain nuclear weapons. That is not a new position. Both sides held that position before Air Force One left Washington. Second, both sides agreed the Strait of Hormuz must remain open and free of tolls. That language is directly contradicted by a law Iran's parliament passed this same week, establishing Iranian control over Hormuz Passage, imposing fees on hostile nations, and permanently banning Israeli vessels. China agreeing that Hormuz should be toll-free does not change Iranian parliamentary legislation. It changes nothing in the Strait. And the third item is not even in the joint statement. It came from a White House readout. Xi Jinping expressed interest in buying more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the Strait. In the future. Interest. Not a commitment, not a mechanism, not a timeline. An expression of interest in buying oil someday. That is what China offered in exchange for the joint statement language on Hormuz and nuclear weapons. Status quo dressed in diplomatic clothing. Now, here is what you are not being told about why China behaved exactly this way. And once you understand this, the Napoleon quote on The Economist's front cover will make devastating sense. The Economist ran a cover last month featuring a photograph of Xi Jinping watching Trump with a single caption: Napoleon Bonaparte's line, "Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake." That cover is not political commentary. It is a strategic assessment. China has no rational interest in ending this war quickly. Every additional day, the Strait of Hormuz remains at less than 10% of its pre-war shipping volume, costs American households more money at the pump. Gas is now at $4.52 nationally. Diesel is approaching its all-time record. The Brown University Cost Tracker puts the total American economic burden of this conflict at $37 billion since February 28th. Every additional day the war continues, American military credibility absorbs pressure. American munitions stockpiles deplete. American approval ratings, now sitting at 32%, decline further. And China positions itself globally as the responsible actor calling for restraint, while Washington threatens enormous military strikes almost daily. China's strategic interest is not served by a quick resolution. It is served by the continuation of exactly the conditions that the Beijing summit produced. Status quo. The trade track tells you everything by contrast. On the commercial side of this exact same summit, inside the exact same Great Hall of the People, on the exact same 2 days, China delivered. Boeing aircraft purchase commitments, agricultural commodity contracts, energy agreements, billions of dollars in commercial deals that the 30 American CEOs flew to Beijing to sign. The trade summit delivered trade. The Iran summit delivered a statement of existing positions and a future oil purchasing interest. Both happened simultaneously. Both were announced as wins. One of them was. There is one more layer to this summit that the American readout did not include, and this absence is as significant as anything that was said. Xi Jinping's sharpest language during the bilateral was not about Iran. It was about Taiwan. She warned Trump directly. Mishandling Taiwan would cause clashes and conflicts that would put the entire relationship in great jeopardy. That warning did not appear in the American readout. The two sides left the same meeting and described it differently. China's top priority received Xi's most forceful language and zero American acknowledgement. America's Iran priority received joint statement language that changes nothing operationally and a future oil purchasing preference. The two governments are not describing the same summit. Here is the operational reality that no joint statement can change. The ceasefire Trump described as on massive life support on Tuesday remains in the same condition. American and Iranian forces have exchanged more than 10 incidents since April 8th, confirmed by the Joint Chiefs. The Strait of Hormuz is running at under 10% of its pre-war daily shipping volume. An Iranian vessel seizure occurred during the state banquet. More than 50 commercial vessels have been redirected. An oil slick from disabled Iranian tankers is spreading toward Gulf coastlines. The Hajj begins in 10 days on May 25th. The October snapback deadline exists. The nuclear gap between Iran's 5-year enrichment position and America's 12 to 15-year demand has not moved. 52 U.S. senators have written rejecting any enrichment deal whatsoever. Iran's supreme leader called Trump unworthy of a response. Trump called Iran's leaders lunatics. The bombing resumes if Iran refuses. And Putin arrives in Beijing days after Trump leaves. The second and final day of the Beijing summit is happening right now. Whatever the working lunch and the second bilateral add to yesterday's joint statement will be the complete diplomatic record of the summit that the entire 3-week architecture was built around, on a war that is now 76 days old and costing American families more every single hour. We track every verified development daily, and what the next 10 days produce between today and the Hajj on May 25th will determine whether this war ends or resumes at a level nobody planned for. 3 questions below. Answer whichever hits hardest. Question A. The joint statement says Iran can never have nuclear weapons and Hormuz must be free and without tolls. Iran's parliament passed a law this week imposing fees and banning Israeli vessels permanently. Rubio said the U.S. was not asking China for help. A ship was seized during the state banquet. If this was the last realistic diplomatic inflection point before resumed combat, what is the specific next pressure instrument the Trump administration deploys on day 77? And is it the short military campaign that U.S. and Israeli planners were finalizing as of May 5th? Question B. China delivered massive commercial wins on trade while standing firm on Iran. Xi's sharpest language on Taiwan was omitted from the American readout. China absorbed 80% of Iran's oil, invoked its anti-sanction law, and expressed only future purchasing interest in exchange for Hormuz language. Putin arrives in Beijing after Trump leaves. If China's strategic interest is actively served by this war's continuation, what does Trump take home from Beijing that changes the trajectory of a conflict that 76 days of military action and economic pressure have not changed? Question C. The Hajj begins May 25th. The October snapback exists. The ceasefire is on life support. The nuclear gap has not moved. China is not pressuring Iran. Putin visits Beijing after Trump. Iran's hardline faction is sabotaging every negotiation. 52 senators reject any enrichment deal. Gas is $4.52. The war cost is climbing toward $1 trillion. If Beijing was the last major diplomatic inflection point before the Hajj, and it produced status quo, what does the diplomatic architecture of the next 10 days look like that produces a different outcome than the 76 days that came before it? Every comment is read. The sharpest analysis gets featured. And if you want this level of daily documented breakdown of the war that is reshaping the global order, the button is right there. No algorithm decides if you see tomorrow's update. You do.